we should see all Australians prosper. We should not have homelessness in this country.
No way. There's no need for it.
There is no need for it. There's plenty of wealth here. So there is an absolute problem in terms of managing that wealth that we've got to address.
We need statesmen again.
The other thing, I want to talk about Australian property in relation to... Now, when I look at this kind of headlines, I go, is this a media beat up or is there actually something there? All right. Okay. So I want to put it in that framework. And I know that because I used to work in the media. All right. Sky News has revealed a story where they have wanted to get information from the Labor government, federal Labor government, in relation to advice that have gone between Treasury and the Treasurer, Jim Chalmers.
Okay.
And it's all about whether they're going to change negative gearing and capital gains tax arrangements for landlords of property.
This is big. This is big.
Now, this is what's been done, and they didn't come forward. So Sky News approached them under the Freedom of Information Act and says, look, we want information from September of 2023 to today, to present, that has occurred in terms of the arrangements of negative gearing and capital gains tax for investment properties. Okay. The Treasury Department came back with, your request is too broad and too large for us to give you these documents, this information. There's just over 1,000 documents that are related to this query. Mm-hmm. So it was kind of like, we can't do this, and it would take us away from other staff work that is required to do.
I'm going to change that. It's not we can't do this. That's we don't want to do this.
Right. So Sky News then approached the Treasurer and asked him, look, what's been going on in terms of the planning between you and the Treasury? Are they advising you? And he says that we have no plans to do capital gains tax and muck around with negative gearing. Now,
well, look, he's been a man of his word.
Bullshit. I call bullshit immediately. Exactly. Because let's look at Mark McGowan in WA.
Okay.
So Mark McGowan said he had no plans to modify the regions of the electorates in the upper house.
Mm-hmm.
Then he won both upper house, lower house within like 2 weeks after winning the elections. All of a sudden, our entire electoral system in WA changed.
Are you telling me that politicians lie?
Of course. Oh. Sorry, he didn't lie because he said it wasn't on the radar.
Of course.
Okay, so then we go further. Firearm reforms.
Mm-hmm.
So no, we're not done touch that. I think since he's been in power, we've had 3 or 4 different firearm reforms. Okay. So, and on top of that, Papalia announced and put out a map showing where every single firearm was stored in WA.
I can't believe
that. Anyways, massive breach of privacy. Going further again. So it seems every single time the government turns around and says they're not going to do something, like they're not going to touch superannuation, all of a sudden they change the legislation around superannuation.
Sure.
So they're capping on it, the negative gearing side of things. Every time they say they're not looking at something, guarantee you they're looking at.
Okay. Albanese not long ago, going into the election, all of that said, they weren't going to change the tax cuts, and then went and changed all the tax cuts. Okay. He absolutely formally just confirmed the fact that he is a complete liar and that we cannot trust him. Right?
Sorry, Erica's on fire at the moment. She asked a question about options, and I said, I will get Derek to message her later.
Okay, fantastic.
So she goes, where is it? Thanks, Captain Underpants.
Just private messages, Radio Australia. And we can swap numbers and all that sort of thing. Happy to talk to you, Erica.
Fantastic. So it's just one of those things I don't want to put it on the general chat for everyone to see, because it will be personal information in there. So if you do want to talk to Derek on a personal point, just send info@edgeradioaustralia.com.au.
Or they can go to my website.
No AU.
There's no AU.
They can book in. They can book in a free 15-minute consult with me. Just go to my website and click those buttons and just say you heard us on Edge Radio Australia, so I know.
See, wow, Derek's finally promoting himself. Well done, Derek. Well done.
You can do that now while I'm talking, and it'll pop up in my email, and we can
beautiful
later. All right,
but what I'm going to get at is that this government has a history, and all governments, but this one, when it comes to tax cuts and changing the tax,
they're full of shit.
Yeah, they are. Right? Okay. So how can we possibly believe this man when?
Well, give us the information that they're entitled to. They've asked under the Freedom of Information Act for this information. Give it to them. If it takes you, if you have to work the weekend, do it.
Look,
We
I
have
personally had
int-
some information that I actually did a freedom of information about some stuff regarding John Quigley, okay, Attorney General here or whatever you want to call him.
he didn't contest, so he won't be for much
No,
longer.
he won't be for much longer. But kind of my point is this, is that I asked very simple information. I was very, very direct about it. It was a very strict amount of time, very strict amount of people involved. And guess what? Oh, it was a real problem. They couldn't actually find the information, and the information that was sent to me was fully like big chunks of it were redacted. So it was effectively, here's a name at the top and here's a name at the bottom, and that was like literally so difficult to get that information from them. Our government is not, and this whether
They're not
this that's a
transparent
state.
at all.
No, there's no transparency whatsoever. That's at state level. So what do you expect from the same effective government, but on a federal side?
So you just got to wait until Labor's not in power and
Yep.
then do it again.
You
and
do.
see what comes out.
Yep.
So again, with this one, first of all, from experience, if they're saying they're not looking at it, they're looking at it.
Of course.
It's as simple as that.
Well, if there's 1,000 documents that come up on a search about that one issue, then they're looking at it from
Of
my
course,
perspective. It's coming up
absolutely.
in discussion.
And the thing is, freedom of information, all they got to do is go Control P, save to PDF, and there it is. Send
Big
it
job.
out.
Big job.
Very hard
Oh.
job. You know, needs $150,000 a week for that.
I reckon.
Like,
Yeah.
You know, that's Treasury's involved. Of course, it needs that much money.
Okay. So what I mean, obviously, we've just talked about what we can do about it, but people are making decisions about investments property is not going to carry on.
Yep.
Uncertainty about this. I mean, what does that do to our financial markets?
It causes uncertainty.
Yeah.
You hit the nail on the head, and that's not what you want in any investment structure,
Not at all.
because you want, to some extent, you know, houses are as safe as bricks are as safe as houses, or whatever the phrase is. What's the
Not
phrase?
always, but majority.
But this is
Safe
one
as
of
houses.
the biggest Australian investments we're talking
course it is.
about. You know, most people, if they're going to do investing, go into this direct investing, go into this space. If you get rid of capital gains tax exemptions and negative gearing, the problem with this is not just investment point of view, but the social problems as well. That's what I'm more concerned about. We've got a housing problem already. If you get rid of negative gearing, right, investors are going, right, we're not going to take the risk in putting these houses up and providing houses for rental. The landlord actually is providing a solution to the government, right?
That's right.
And this is what they're not getting, right? If you punish the one and make it so difficult, they go, fine, we'll take our money
they don't-
elsewhere.
But they don't care about that.
No, they're providing solutions to homelessness.
Well, they're in a bubble, mate. Like, okay, they're in Canberra. They don't have any idea what's happening in the real world, and they don't speak to their constituents. They live, as I say, like in this completely separate entity. This world that doesn't.
They do live in it. They
represent
do
us.
understand it. You got to remember they're a socialist government. What they're pissed about is they don't have control of it. They don't have access to it. They want the property market to crash, because what happens when the property market crashes?
Well, they can run in
They
and then
foreclose.
buy.
Yeah,
Cheap.
the houses foreclose from the banks, and then the government can step in and start taking over things like that. So all of a sudden, everyone is reliant on the government for the housing side of things. Okay, so it's up to the government to release a house. I think there's a much more sinister aspect to this, and you've got to understand the actual basic constitution of the Labor government to understand why they're doing this.
Okay, on the front of okay, let's talk about public housing. Okay, public housing, I'm told.
By the way, the housing industry makes up 5% of Australia's GDP.
Okay,
So it's a large whack of
I
all our
agree.
finances.
Okay, when we talk about public housing at the moment, I've been told by somebody in the industry that the current waiting time, right, the shortest waiting time. So if you fit all the criteria, if you're an Indigenous single mum, okay, which is the quickest way you'll get, that's how the system works. It's 12 years. 12
that's
years.
not right. So I know that from experience, because if you're already in the system,
Yep.
and you can prove that the house that you're in is not fit for human habitation, they'll move you within 2 months.
Okay, I'm assuming from this person I spoke
So
to,
this
there would be people
happened like
coming
3 weeks
into the
ago, 4
system,
weeks
right? Okay,
Different story.
so okay, that's what I'm told, and I'm also told that particular people who will apply for public housing will have a wait. The longest I've heard is 21 years.
Yeah.
Now, how do you live your life like that? Why do you want to plan your life that way? But at the same time, I understand, what, are you in a position where you're in your 40s, for argument's sake, and you think, oh, gee, I'm just struggling to survive. Do I have to go into that so that in my mid 60s, I've got some sort of place to live? I mean, is that how it works?
There was the public housing sector is full of abuse. There was I'm trying to remember the name. I can see her face. there was a politician in Australia. Her mother was a state housing person, so generational welfare dependency.
Sure.
And so she got given a house, and then she was in Parliament for a long time.
Okay.
Because public housing isn't means tested. So even as a sitting
Really?
member of Parliament, she was still in public housing.
It's not means tested.
No, it's not.
How's that work?
It could have changed in the last 10 years,
Okay.
but my understanding is it's still not means tested. So if you start in public housing
Yep.
and then you get a job or whatever and you start doing whatever, they don't take you out of the house. You stay in that house. So I'd love to know how many people in the public housing system can afford to get a house on their own, but they're not moving because they know there's no houses available.
I would say that's very
Well, and that's
expensive.
understandable.
Yeah,
Of course
but
it
I
is.
don't blame the person.
I
It's
blame
just the
the-
system
No,
they're
not
in.
at all.
So the
Sorry, Dad, you
entire
go.
system is stuffed at the moment.
Yeah.
So-
Yeah, getting back to Travis's point in terms of the market, if the market is to crash in Australia, and they've been talking about this for ages in terms of the property market, and it hasn't happened. All right, it's stagnated. It's stagnated for 10, 15 years recently after the boom prior to that, but it hasn't crashed per se.
I wouldn't call that. So this is coming in, say, early 90s, whatever. And if you use the assumption that the house market doubles every 10 years, that's where it should be at. We're still so far above where we should be. Even if we had a massive crash, let's say the market lost 30, 40%, it'd probably still be above where it should be.
Well, okay, let's think
So-
about this from 50 years ago. Think about it from a percentage of your wages, right? Okay, think about what percentage of your wage would go to your
I
mortgage.
hate this argument, but anyway.
Okay, and I know the houses have gotten bigger and more expensive from that
Well,
point.
actually, they've gone smaller and smaller blocks as well.
Well, the blocks have definitely got smaller.
Yeah.
Sorry, more to the point, the houses have got fancier. Okay, because I mean, most of us grew up in a 3x1, right? That's or certainly, Joe. That's how I see
With an
it.
outhouse.
Yeah.
Well, if you have a look at most units that have been townhouses, apartment complex.
Yep.
Most apartment complexes are like 2 bedrooms. Strata title properties houses, a vast majority of them are 3x1s or 3x2s. So most houses these days that are getting built are actually
Okay,
3-bedroom
well,
houses.
Where I'm going on this is the fact that, okay, as a percentage of the value of the house or apartment or whatever, okay, the property you live in, your wages are such a small part of it, whereas before. So the actual affordability has gone completely out the window.
But this is why I hate this argument. So out the moment, let's talk about right now.
Okay.
So generally, I think it's about 60% of your income, like a two-person income, goes towards the mortgage or the house repayments.
Sure.
So back in the 70s, 60s, it was only about 25%.
Okay.
Even at those stupid high
And
interest
they used
rates.
to say, if it was above 30%, you're
wouldn't
under
get-
mortgage stress.
Yeah. So
Right.
now I think it's 70% is actually the mortgage stress. Correct me if I'm wrong on that one, but anyway. So the biggest difference is, and you can't compare the two because the system we're in is totally different. So have a look at what welfare options were available in the 60s compared to now.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, I'll take that on
So
board.
it was totally different. The amount of money that the government's paying out back then is minuscule compared to what they're paying
Oh,
now.
don't get me started on the fact
Like-
that they started the social class. They absolutely thoroughly financially incentivized being a single parent.
What's the solution here in Australia
Release
in
more
terms of
land.
land? Well, okay,
Absolutely.
you want to
more
release land. That's great, and I agree. We've got a nice shortage of land and that sort of thing. But then, what do you say to all those who've paid their mortgages off and they've got lovely houses, or they're in a mortgage? That just suddenly reduces the price of their land that they're holding.
Sorry,
Or
but that's as a landowner, that's a risk you take. Like when you buy a share, should the government guarantee the value of that share?
Of course
No,
not.
that's a risk you take. When you buy an investment property, the fact that it may go down is a risk you have to accept.
This is the problem with politics. Okay, in Australia, is they only think in 3 years,
Of course they do.
allotments. Okay, if we think long term here, I think we've agreed that Australia needs to become more self-sufficient in terms of what it produces. Of
course.
right? To do that, we need different towns and cities in different areas, right?
Yep.
The smart thing is to start building those towns and cities now. Okay.
Yes.
And then you've got, to attract people to go there. Hey, there is cheaper land here, right?
Yep.
And the cities
I've said
start
this before on one of the
emerging in those places.
And it's got to be more than 4 hours away. Like adding land, let's say for WA, adding extra land in Geraldton, Albany, it's too close.
Not around surrounding areas. I'm talking completely.
Yeah, we've got to go further, like Carnarvon. We've got to go inland as well, beyond like Hyden out that way. Because what it is, we want want it to be far enough away from the city that they're not going to go, oh, let's just go to the city
Well,
and relocate the city. because
it's
there's
not
more
just
jobs.
moving out to the bush for the sake of moving out to the bush. There's got to be a reason for it.
There's got to
right?
be jobs there.
There's got to be jobs. There's either natural minerals
So-
there, or there's special developments in terms of, you know, if you wanted to do a space program, right? Obviously, you don't want to do that right next to the CBD.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
So the other thing is, and I'm glad you said this, because this is one of the campaign things that I was running on back in 2019. So the Fremantle Wharf is done. Like the pillars underneath are corroding. Like it needs a
It's
total
a busy
rebuild.
port.
It's a very busy port and it needs to be relocated. So what a lot of people in Fremantle want is to change it from a freight port into a tourist port. So, you know,
That's my thought.
or that sort of,
That's
yes,
what I like.
100% agree with it. Where do you think they want to move it?
Well, the
Kwinana.
Coburn Sound, yeah, absolutely. Did move down to
So they want to
Kwinana.
create the Kwinana Outer Harbour.
Yes.
So that's Rockingham. You're literally just out of the metro area.
Yep.
On top of that, they want to create a special economic zone where whoever owns the land determines the labour laws, the opening hours, and all that sort of stuff. So all of Kwinana will effectively no longer be Australia. And there's a
Oh,
labour
that's
report.
a bit-
No, there's a report that actually outlines everything. Even the World Bank said that any first world country is stupid to create a special economic zone. So that's coming directly from the Maritime Union. So anyway, moving forward, why the hell are you building a new wharf within the Perth metro, like as close you are?
Mhm.
It should be going to Geraldton. Bunbury is another place. There's a place in just north of Geraldton called Oakajee. It's a
Okay.
natural 32-meter deep harbour.
Okay.
There's next to zero environmental
Yeah.
impact.
That's all great.
Yeah.
But okay, then the argument would be transport, because then
Why?
you've got to
You've
put
got the
things-
train
you've
line
got to
down
put,
the coast.
You've got to put more train lines in. Okay.
No, they're already there.
They're already there?
WA is absolutely
Okay,
littered
okay.
with train lines.
All
You
right.
got to remember during the gold rush time.
Yep.
How did they get everything from Kalgoorlie to Perth?
Sure.
Train
Okay.
lines.
Okay. So that's in place, and you could put road trains on, obviously, with the trucks.
Yeah.
But that is more costs, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Can it balance that? I mean,
Yes. Easily.
can it?
Easily.
Okay.
So let's look at Midland, for example. You
Mhm.
run the train line out to Midland. There's already
Yep.
train tracks
There
there.
is. It's there.
Run all the cargo. So you remember there's a train track in near Port Hedland
Mhm.
that's like 2.3 kilometers long.
Sure.
Okay. So it's bigger. It's well and truly big enough to be
Mhm.
able to fill out an ore carrier in one train.
Okay.
Okay. So a ship comes in, you put it on the train, send it to Perth, send it to a holding yard in Midland, and then
Yep.
from there send the trucks in and out.
Okay.
So
that
why
works.
would
Oh,
you
yeah,
send
I
the
understand.
trucks into Perth and send them out and block up things like South Street,
Well, the problem
running trucks through residential areas? It just doesn't make sense.
So as I said, the problem is though, government only thinks in 3-year allotments when
Thoroughly
the next
agree.
election is, and so I think we've got to re-look at that and go, guys, look. I mean, I hear some of the election promises that going, oh, we're going to reduce this, we're going to give more handouts to these people, we're going to do this, the welfare type win votes
Mhm.
policy card that
buy
they
votes.
play.
Buy votes.
And it's going, look, to really, we should see all Australians prosper. We should not have homelessness in this country.
No way. There's no need for
There
it.
is no need for it. There's plenty of wealth here. So there is a absolute problem in terms of managing that wealth that
We
we've got
need-
to address.
We need statesmen again, right? Not politicians. We need statesmen. So people who do think longer term, people who are thinking about, creating an environment and a society that
Well,
has a real future.
That's fair,
Not
but
3
you
years.
have had one in the United States recently and got all this hate mail for it, and then they got all these politicians getting their nose out about that
Yep.
that individual.
Yep.
And now they realise, well, hang on a second, he wasn't so bad than we thought he was. Let's bring him back.
Well, and we do.
The reality is, people don't like change. Eric.
No. And as
hate change.
Australians love, the tall poppy syndrome, right? They love to tear anybody down who stands up for them, which is ridiculous and it grates me. Please change that. Because we would have such a better society if people with great ideas were actually able to stand up and be heard and not have every man his dog tearing at them.
I hear it on the radio, Australians don't want to see everybody driving around in luxury cars, and I'm thinking,
Why not?
Why
wouldn't
not?
it be great? We don't produce our own cars anymore.
Yep.
Wouldn't it be great if every Australian was driving a luxury car if they wanted to? If you want
Yeah.
your ute and that sort of stuff, that can be a luxury too. I mean,
It
you
should
can
be
get
a
luxury,
luxury
utes,
ute, a
but
Marlowe.
well,
Lumpy.
if you want that, great. But let's not.
Well, yeah, and it comes back to the little theory about, I would rather thrive than just survive, right?
Yeah.
Like, I don't understand what
But we
that
will
ethos.
never, ever, ever be able to thrive under a Labor government because they're always trying to steal everything off you. The biggest problem is I had a bit of an epiphany about 2 or 3 weeks ago.
Okay.
This is just after I filleted my foot open, so the painkillers might have been the cause of this one at the time.
Could
So
be.
I came to an epiphany that Australia is actually both a socialist and a capitalist country.
You mentioned to me, and I
Yeah.
can't believe it. I'm going to agree with the shaved monkey here. Go.
So for the people who work or do things under their own name.
Yep.
So let's start on the lower social economic thing. Let's say you're stay-at-home mum.
Yep.
You don't work, you just look after kids, fully government welfare funded,
Okay.
or, you know, disability pensions, whatever. So you are in an absolute 100% socialist country.
Makes sense.
All your welfare's paid for
Yep.
you, your schooling's paid for you for the kids, your income is paid for your kids, you get massively discounted power, water, everything's massively discounted. Pretty much the government pays for everything.
Yep.
Fantastic. Let's say you've got someone who's just entered the workforce and earns, say, $40,000 a year.
Mm.
Little bit of tax, you're still getting a heap of help from the government, and you're pretty much told what to do, where to go. They regulate everything in the workforce for you. You get just enough to start getting ahead.
Okay.
And now this is where it becomes a real socialist government, and it's sort of like the crossover. So let's say you're now a professional, you finish your university, you finish your trade, you're earning, say, $250,000 a year, like you've got a really well-paying job.
Sure.
You know how much tax you're paying in that
Oh.
tax bracket? You're being taxed through the nose. They're absolutely fisting you up to their elbow. So what's happening is, because you're doing everything under yourself, they don't want you to get ahead, because they're going to they're stealing anywhere between 40 to 50% of your tax of what you earn.
Of your income. Yeah.
On top of that, you don't have access to free schooling anymore because you earn too much. You don't get free health services.
No.
You've got to pay for all your hospital yourself. And on top of it, you then got the Medicare levy on top of another 3% on top of what everyone else is paying, because you're doing well for yourself.
You're being punished for success.
So this is where the crossover is. So let's say you do have a bit of financial knowledge, a bit of education behind yourself. And I'm not talking the government funded education. You've actually taught yourself how to do things. You've spoken to some really good accountants, financial planners, people like Derek, and you've got that understanding of the wealth system.
Shop for your knowledge.
And so what's happened at this point, you've decided, you know what? I'm going to work for myself instead of working for someone else. I'm going to set up foundations, structures, and everything. So I'm going to pull myself away from the government system through a tax file number, and I'm going to go through an ABN system. So what happens is, all of a sudden, you don't get the free hospital stuff, you don't get the schooling and all that sort of stuff, but you pay your tax after you've done all your expenses. So all of a sudden, instead of paying, 40, 50% tax, which is through the nose, you're only paying like 15 to 20, 30% tax.
Sure.
So then from that point, you're now into a capitalist system.
Oh, beautiful.
So I actually think that Australia is actually a dual, a dual government system. We are both the capitalist system and a socialist system at the same time.
As I say, I thoroughly agree. And it's a very interesting way of looking at it.
And
It's pretty
depending
accurate.
on, and the cool thing is, you don't have to be earning more than $250,000 to be a part of the actual capitalist system to pay less tax. You've as long as you get some really good, clean advice when you're early, get a good accountant. And I'm not H&R Block, nothing against them, but they're just a socialist accountant, in my opinion.
Well, there's some business,
Go find some real accountants. Go do your financial courses. They're not that much. And when you look at how much money you can save in tax in the long run versus how much the education costs, it's well worth it.
Well, as far as I'm concerned, what you're saving in tax is extra income. Well, you know what I mean?
I
Like,
think
it's income you're entitled to.
Yeah. You will spend money on what you value.
Yeah.
And you'll spend your time on what you value. And I find it funny because, one of my courses that I do is not on the cheap end. And I don't apologize for that, because, I've got clients who have more than paid for their course costs in the wealth that they've generated after doing the course. I go, that's what it's about. They got value for money.
Yeah,
right?
that's a business decision. You are deciding to invest X, Y, Z, and you're going to make a profit out of it. You're going to make more money.
I'm nowhere near a millionaire. The one's a different story. But no, I'm nowhere near a millionaire. And that's been done intentionally. So the money I've saved in tax alone has paid for Derek's courses multiple times over.
There you go.
So like, why would you pick the system you want to be in? So if you want to be controlled and with a dog leash and said, right, you will go to this doctor, you will go to that school, you will teach your kids this sort of stuff. If that's what you want, then happy days, stay in that system. But if you don't want to be in that system, you need to talk to people like Derek, get yourself educated, find out what you can and can't do, because you still got to remember, this is still the system they're in place. The government has set these systems up intentionally for the people that they want to control and not control, because I guarantee you, all their donors like, you know what? I don't want that system. I want this system. So they've set it up so we allow it.
And I would take it a step further. I think you've raised an excellent point, but you'll find this in any political structure, right?
Yep.
There's what I call the Babylonian economy.
Yes.
Right, which goes back to ancient Babylon. You look at where it originated from and how it came to being. It goes, whoa, I never saw it. I never knew that was in existence. as opposed to the preferred economy, and how God set up life for us to actually live. When I got that in my heart and saw the contrast, and when I really understood it, it then led me down the path of, okay, how do I operate in that preferred economy system, right?
Yep.
Now my students get the benefit of that. And it's funny because I could tell you some of the results you're getting, but most people wouldn't believe it because it sounds too good to be true.
Look,
but it's a spiritual and something in the heart that has to shift and change
I agree.
if you're going to step into that.
Derek, I've done your course, one you're referring to, and learning about the Babylonian system, and thank you for ruining me for life.
But
I can never look at that rubbish. I can't.
You've been unlocked, Aaron.
I have.
You've been,
I have. I'm like a computer game, and I'm going to go to the next
you
level.
got the cheat codes now.
Cheat codes. Awesome.
Sorry, it's the block up, down.
It's funny because I said that to one of my students
that's
recently.
Scorpion's fatality on Mortal Kombat, the original one.
Of course.
So sorry, computer nerd 101.
It's funny because I wrote that to one of my students recently who are frustrated. They're frustrated in their career. They know in their heart they need to change. They're starting a business. They're doing some stuff. They're looking at trading and stuff like that. And they were just wrestling with the whole dynamic. And I know the wrestle. I know what it takes to take that leap out of that system and go, yeah, I mean, I got to do this. And I just wrote to him, literally, I said, congratulations. You have been ruined for life.
You have been.
And the one thing I will say for the people who do want to get away from that safety net, just go have a look at a cat in the wild versus a cat in the house.
Okay.
Right? The cat's like comfy. It rolls on its belly, gets scratched on the belly, and is like, and they live longer, but they don't have fun.
What a strange analogy, but thank you for that. Really do. Really, look, I mean, to me, I would take it completely differently.
To our dog lovers out there.
To me, it's made this difference.
Actually, for the dog lovers.
Oh,
okay, here you go. So you've got a dog, you let it go off the lead, and it goes back inside. Do you want to be that pampered fat dog that does nothing, it doesn't achieve anything? Or do you want to be that dog, the moment you take it off the lead, it just
gone.
It's gone. It's gone. It's having adventures. It's having a blast. It's pissing on every pole it can find.
It's out there on 600 acres on a farm.
Yeah, and it comes back when it wants to come back. Yeah, so which dog do you think has more fun?
Well, clearly the dog that does the runner. This dog right here loves the fact that this information has allowed me to literally live my life purpose. That's the big difference, right? And that's not about, I'm not even talking about the financial side of things. Obviously that's related. Obviously that's a big part of it, but just the knowledge has opened my mind to what's bigger than the things that were yes. And the things that were holding me back are no longer holding me back. So it is as much a financial decision as it is a spiritual decision in my eyes.